Started. Appreciate you being here. Glad you're back. Okay, so we're starting a new quarter. Finally, I have it in good authority. This is a new quarter. So we're gonna talk about building a unique community, and we're gonna do so by looking through the 10 Commandments and really trying to address not just what each one of them individually is about, but what are the 10 Commandments, what were they really about, and then what are they a shadow of, and then spoiler alert, how they find their fulfillment in Jesus. Okay, so the 10 Commandments, we talk about the 10, but in reality there was 613. Okay, 10 were just the heart of it, if you will. Some debate 613, some 616, but that gets all nerdy. We'll just go with 613, okay? So the commandments, what we call the law, the Torah, which literally means instruction, there's a role for it, and there's a purpose for it, and it has to do with community. Well, you might be like, well, that might be interesting, intriguing, fascinating, surely Mel will make it witty and memorable, but why is that relevant and applicable to us? Once again, it has something to do with Jesus, so that should be of interest already. But even if you think about it beyond that, aren't we trying to develop communities? Right? All the way from your friends group to your coworkers to family to church, sports teams, and if you want to go broader there, your extended family, our city, our state, our nation, the world at large. It's all attempts to build community. Now, you can argue the successes of that or the lack of it. There's plenty of there, but it's all somewhat social experiments in trying to build community. Often new communities start out because the previous ones, then the social attempts there didn't really go well. Like the foundation of even this nation, right? Things weren't going well over there in England, so we decided to make it a change and try some things out. Now, arguably better, worse, and there's plenty to argue there. But community, how do we build community? And in a world of communities, guided by many, many, many different perspectives, worldviews, philosophies, gods. Whatever you want, it's all guided by something. In a world of multi-options, what does this community look like? And why is it, if it is at all, unique? And the storyline is just that, a storyline. So you cannot, in my humble opinion, truly, completely understand the premise of what Jesus is doing in the idea of kingdom of heaven, Jesus, church community, if you don't understand the backstory, which includes the 10 Commandments. So let's begin in the beginning, right? If you've ever been in a class with me, it doesn't matter what class it's about, we find a way to start in Genesis. So Genesis chapter 1, right? In chapter 1 and 2. It begins with a statement, in the beginning, God, Now, right there we can stop. God, it was a world of gods. Everybody, every community, every family, every tribe, every empire, everybody believed in gods. Okay? And those gods was at the heart of what it meant to be those communities. They looked after those communities. They were the reasons for those communities. They empowered those communities. They defended those communities. Or, real or imagined, that was the worldview. So to have a people group, the Jews, Israel, former slaves, being ruled over by Egypt and all that, for them to have a God and their creation story was fine, because everybody had it, and why not one more, and you just pick and choose and go from there. And then the idea wasn't really, is there a God or not a God, or gods, it's which gods are better, which group of people are better. And often you would measure it like when Moses and Pharaoh stand there against each other, or representing gods or two worldviews. You have Pharaoh dressed all Pharaoh-like, whatever that, we've seen some movies, very fancy, standing just above, because that's where his throne would be, above those that come in to talk to him. He is there at the heart of an empire that was the leading empire of that world. And then who do we have on the other corner representing Yahweh? We have an old man who smells like sheep and looks like a homeless guy with a staff, so timid, so uneasy about himself that he has to whisper in the ear of his brother, who then speaks to Pharaoh. If you're going to do betting, which we're not for that, but if we were, who would you bet on? Like, seriously, homeless dude or the gods of Egypt? Well, and so then we have this cosmic smackdown between Yahweh, the God of the slaves, and their representatives, two old guys, and the gods of Egypt, the most powerful nation at the time, and their representative, who claimed to be in the image of their top god. Okay, now back to Genesis. It starts out with the premise of there is one God, or this God. It's a generic word, Elohim. It just means spiritual being. So in the beginning, there's a spiritual being, and this spiritual being creates the realm of the gods, the heavens, and the realm that we're familiar with, this reality. And it says that world, that existence starts out with this void and dark and dreary and watery abyss kind of imagery of like, you don't know what's under there, what might come out of there. And the presence of this spiritual being, this Elohim, begins his very presence, his spirit hovering over the waters, his very presence begins a transformative motion, a landscaping towards better. Now, listen carefully. The Bible does not claim that God, that we translate capital G, is the only God. It doesn't. Now, because the true word there is spiritual being. So let's make that statement again, because many of you look, worried, including one of our elders here. So, the Bible does not claim that there is only one spiritual being out there. We're okay with that, right? Don't we believe in heaven? In angels and demons and Satan and other things happening out there? Okay, but here's what the Bible does claim with the whole creation story. There is only one spiritual being that is the origin in the beginning of life, which I think is a bolder statement. And which spiritual being is that? As the story unfolds, we get to know him as Yahweh, Lord. So what does the story of creation imply or say about this worldview? First of all, it doesn't claim to be a creation story of one ethnicity or one people group. It claims to be the creation story of all of humanity, which was already different. Other creation stories claimed kind of more as a cultural slant and an ethnicity bend there for its own culture or its own race. This creation story says that this one spiritual being, Yahweh, he is the creator of all of humanity, and all of humanity is but one family, one people. This is important. And that one people is equally, man and women, created in the image of this God. So there's the cosmic heavens, the realm of God in that world, or in that ancient Near Eastern world. It's where the gods were, okay, but we're going with Yahweh only. So in that cosmic realm of the gods, or of God, Yahweh, we, humanity, are his representatives in this physical realm. We're his representatives here. We who? Humanity. Which people? All of us. But which ethnicity? All of us. All of us. Now, other creation stories had certain people within an ethnicity that claimed to be the representatives of their gods. Like, for example, the royal family, the Pharaoh. Now, how convenient, because then you're representing your gods, thus your gods have empowered you to rule over others. But in this creation story, we're all the royal family, all of us. One people, one tribe, one kingdom, one family. Does that make sense? Okay, very, very significant. Because now, things got messy from there, right? Genesis 3, it gets complicated. We roll our eyes at Yahweh and go do our own thing. And then one brother kills the other. Like, it just starts going downhill, right? Violence, separation. The fact that Cain kills Abel, what happens to then Cain? What's his punishment? Buddy? That's so he won't get killed. That's actually to save him from a certain degree of punishment. What's his punishment? Banishment. He gets to go live in the world he's creating. When kids roll their eyes at their parents, it's like, it's my life, I can go do whatever I want. Yeah, we shouldn't do this. But occasionally the temptation is, fine, peanut butter breath, go. Just, here's the keys. Go live in the world you think you're capable of creating. Right? See you in 2 hours, right? I mean, like when you're hungry, or when the gas runs out, you're like, oh, So that's his punishment. He goes to live in the world he's creating by murdering his brother. So right there, we're already having a separation of people. It's all one family. One brother kills the other. There's still others, mom and dads. So he goes to create his own city of Cain that he names after his son. But so there's already divisions. Then you get to, on the other side of the flood, you have the table of nations. And now the three sons of Noah, they go out there and all these ethnicities and so forth. Okay, now we're separating. But it's still one family, or meant to be. But now it's a family in conflict. It's a family in conflict. And what horrible conflict? It just gets, war breaks out, murder, rape, all kinds of horrible, horrible things. Okay, in the middle of that mess, a very broken, divided family, down a whole lot of different issues of division, ethnicity included, God calls out one family, Abraham. Abram and Sarai, right? Then Abraham and Sarah. Have you ever noticed where they get called out of? The geography there is Babylon, which is brilliant, because Babylon is going to personify kind of like the villain of the story. They'll destroy the temple. So we're headed there. But what does it look like when communities their own version? Well, you're going to have Babylon. And what that personifies. What happens when God, out of all of this broken family, calls out one part of it to remold it, to mature it? So then you have, Babylon, and then you have God's people. Now, God's people, this is also important, was never to be, God likes this ethnicity better. And everybody else, good luck. No, in reality, as God is forming or is choosing that family, and there's going to be this covenant made with that family, promises are made to Abraham. I'm going to watch over you, make you great. You're going to have a descendants into a nation. They're going to have a land, and one of your descendants will be a blessing to all nations. Spoiler alert, Jesus. Okay? So what God is doing is trying to somehow restore a community. Reunite a family. And as that covenant is being confirmed, we have circumcision gets in that and all. But here's another part of that. We won't discuss circumcision. But as that was being done there, God says, anybody and everybody, it doesn't matter if it's your biological family, if you have servants, foreigners, anybody and everybody that is wanting to be a part of this community, if they're circumcised, they can. So even there, we're already like, this ain't about ethnicity, folks, which is cool. It's by design. Genesis 1 starts out claiming we're all one family, so that's already important. Then even God's solution is already one of multi-ethnic, like let's gather folks that want to be gathered. Let's do family different. Okay, so then we go from Moses or Abraham. From Abraham to Moses, we jumped about 400 years or so. And we end up in Egypt. It starts out reasonably well. They're just one ethnicity within the greater empire of Egypt. 400 years go by. They're being enslaved. You have oppression, power struggles, politics at their worst. Fear-mongering, which is kind of the reasoning that the new Pharaoh finds a way to validate. Let's enslave and let's try to genocide an entire people group that have been with us for 300 years. But they might side with our enemies. Come on. Just fear-mongering at its best. And so then we have oppression. Moses comes out of that. The smackdown between Yahweh and the powerful gods of Egypt. And of course, Yahweh wins. And then the people are freed. Now we're freed to go do what? Go start to live up this nation, this new community, this family done right. Now, how's it go? Isn't it a country song? You can get the boy out of the country, but you can't get the country out of the boy. Or it's got to be a country song. Maybe it's the girl you can't get out of the country. So same thing with Israel. You get Israel geographically out of Egypt, but how do you get that Egyptness out of Israel? Well, so they end up 3 months, they get to Mount Sinai. Okay? This is all set up, okay? We're going to eventually get to Ten Commandments. So Moses takes the people, they've been freed from physical death, physical slavery, and now the hopes of being a newfound community by the presence of Yahweh only, God only. So they go to Mount Sinai because that's where God had appeared to Moses at the burning bush. And then God from his cosmic realm comes down to a mountain, which was a high place, which in that ancient world, the high places were how you got closer to the realm of the gods. But God comes down to that high place. The folks are down at the bottom. A representative, the anointed, Moses, goes to be an intercessor, which is a shadow of Jesus, goes to be an intercessor. He goes up there, and God is going to enter into an exclusive covenant marital kind of relationship equivalent with the people there. And they're going to get to say, yes, I do, and then they're going to take pictures and post it on Instagram how happy they are. Yet when Moses goes up, actually half a dozen times, but one of the times Moses is up there working out the details, which has to do with the covenant, the law, and so forth. Okay, what's the bride doing down the bottom? In other words, what's the people doing? Yeah, they getting crazy party. They cheating. They're cheating with the God from Egypt. Welcome to humanity. Right, it's a mess. So they're cheating. God tells Moses, you know what? I got time. Let's just start over. We'll go. You got some kids? We'll just go from you. You'll be like Abraham again, And Moses, then Moses does what Jesus will do. He becomes an intercessor. And then takes that symbolism there. Then not all the people are killed, but some. In all this process, this covenant, this commitment, this relational kind of marriage of sorts between God and the people, the premise is this. We live in a world of people, of divisions within this overall arching family. And each one of these divisions have their gods and do things the way that their gods called them to be. Let's show the world what it looks like to be exclusively, once again, doing humanity version Yahweh only. In that setting, we have 613 laws. So what's the point of the 613 laws? Anybody? What's the point? Okay, you start with number 1, which is where we're going to go. The point is, what does it truly look like to be a people group that reflects Yahweh only? What does it look like to do community uniquely different than the other worlds or the other communities out there? Not because this ethnicity or this part of the family is better than the rest of the family. What makes this group unique is Yahweh's presence only. That's what makes it unique. And so the laws are an expression of how to live that out. It's fascinating if you read through them. Some of them were weird. But they have to all the way to do with if you have no other gods before me. What happens if you accidentally kill the neighbor's donkey? Important. What if you have a bull that gorges, gores, thank you. Yes, that makes a difference. Gores your neighbor. What happens if that bull had the tendency to gore and you already knew that was a thing? So then it's a more intense punishment. It's very interesting. Also, if you're building a second floor to your house, you need to put like a little lattice thing or a little fence around it because you don't want somebody accidentally falling off. I mean, very practical to very like deep theological and everything in between. Okay. It's to show what the nation is to be. Well, let's go to Exodus. Exodus chapter 20. That's basically going to be where we're, walk through the 10 Commandments. But let's actually move back one chapter, Exodus chapter 19. So all this is to set up for you to remember kind of some events that happened up to this point. So here we're at Mount Sinai. God comes down from his cosmic heavens into that connecting point. That mountain, and there's other symbolisms throughout the story, that mountain, the burning bush, some altars and some things forward, the temple, the tabernacle, they become connecting points of these two worlds. The cosmic world of God and this physical realm. So these moments are connecting points. And Jesus will be the fullness of these connecting points. He's God with us. Get the imagery? So, chapter 19. Moses is going up there, interceding. Verse 4. Verse 3. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord, so here's Yahweh, called to him from the mountain and said, I'm going to try to do God voice. I always imagine kind of like James Earl Jones or something, It could be Darth Vader. It could be the Lion King. You can be God. I don't know. This is what you are to say. Is that good? Yeah. Okay. This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt. So what God does to Egypt, the 10 plagues there, which, by the way, this is really cool. When the creation story has 10 utterances of God that moves from chaos to creation. It's cool, right? So then here, the 10 plagues are creation in reverse. It's 10 utterances of God that deconstruct Egypt. It's really interesting. But part of what that was to do was also to show God's people, hey, I'm not just some tribal God, some little statue you clean and put in the corner. I am Yahweh and I am God. Okay? And so it's to show them too, and it's also to show Egypt, your God's they're sucky, they're going to lose. And then it also had this point of showing the neighboring nations. God was setting this all up. It had been easier to then conquer the neighboring nations, but the folks didn't listen, so it gets complicated. But you yourself have seen what I did to Egypt and how I carried you on eagle's wings, it's poetic, and brought you to myself. Now, so because of that, because I won the smackdown between the powerful gods of Egypt, because of that, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, including 613 commandments, then out of all the nations you will be my treasure possession. Although the entire world is mine, it's all mine. It's all one family. They're misguided and divided, but it's all mine. You will be for me a king of priests, a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. Okay, we all know what the word holy means, right? Set apart, unique. That's the very point of the title of this series, building a unique community. In a world of communities, we're going to be unique. We're going to be set apart once again because the exclusive presence of Yahweh. Now, but that's not so much what I want to emphasize here. I want to emphasize this. You are to be to me a kingdom of priests. Actually, there were priests within Israel, right? The tribes, you have the Levites, descendants of Levi. Israel is united tribes, okay? You have the descendants of Levi. Within the Levites, they were to care for the temple and tabernacle and a lot of that. Now, within the Levites, the descendants of Aaron were to be priests. They are to be full-time, exclusively acting and interacting and coordinating the management and the day-to-day of the tabernacle, okay? So every priest was a Levi, but not every Levi is a priest. Does that make sense? So, but here, and by the way, priests weren't God, this isn't invented in Israel. Every group of people and all their gods had some kind of priests. And they played an interceding role between the gods and the people. They coordinated the traditional stuff, the religious ceremonies. They were kind of heralds of the truth of those gods, and they did interceding roles. So here within Israel we have that. Okay, makes sense. Yet somehow he says here, actually, you're going to be an entire kingdom of priests, which is accurate but not accurate. There's a very specific group of priests. Yet somehow we're all to be priests. This is important. Israel was never meant to be, once again, an elitist group because somehow they're better, and God, because they merited special favor, they were God's people, and everybody's just going to burn in hell one day. They were to be, as a nation, to have the function of priests. They were to be a nation that by the way they lived and by the fact that they represented the complete and full presence of Yahweh, they were to act in ways that became an interceding nation. They were to be intercessors between God and the rest of the family that's very broken and following other things. So think about it. If you have family issues, surely nobody does, but you've heard of it, right? You've watched some soap operas and maybe movies and stuff. Often there's somebody in the family who's trying to keep things together, right? They're trying to reach out and kind of get the brothers there and the in-laws and this. Okay, that's supposed to be Israel by how they lived. They were supposed to show the world, here's the kind of family we could be again. And the law, once again, plays a role in that process. because they've been living with their in-laws for too long, right? They've been living with their cousins, most likely, their cousins, the Egyptians, for too long. Like, they've been doing family distorted. So God's presence has to mold them into the kind of family that's then to represent that to the rest of the family. And so the law was to play this role. The Ten Commandments, starting there, or a good summary of them in Exodus 20. And we're going to walk through each one of those as our class unfolds. But let me summarize a few things here, or highlight a few things. The Ten Commandments, once again, they're not all of it. They're 10 of 613. But they are foundational. They embody what the rest of them are about. So the Ten Commandments, 4 of them has to do with their interaction with God, Yahweh. The rest of them, the 6, then have to do with the relationship as a community. So you can only do community right, you can only do family right, you can only do relationships right if you have your relationship with God right. It's an extension of your relationship with God. Fast forward 1,500 years, we have Jesus. And Jesus is trying to show God's people that have not become God's, they're not acting like God's people. Jesus actually will make a parallel with Israel and Babylon, which would have been like, it just, how? But Babylon, not Babylon. So, Jesus is the religious leaders, the representatives of that version of God's people, which was not what God wanted, are trying to entrap Jesus. One of the traps is the conversation that leads to what we call the greatest commandment. Right? So here's some representatives, lawyers of the law, they've been diving into this law for 1,500 years. And by this time, there was commentary upon commentary upon commentary. So in Hebrew, the sentence, keep the Sabbath holy, is like that long. 1,500 years worth of commentary upon it. There was like volumes this thick explaining what that meant. And by the time Jesus comes around, these have been put in equal footing, as if from the mouth of God himself, which becomes problematic, but that's a different issue. So they're trying to entrap Jesus, who's a peasant. Jesus was a country boy from the sticks. You understand that, right? He spoke with an accent. He was a hee-haw. He's just like he's just a peasant. A peasant from a tiny village, podunk nowhere. And here he is claiming to be the voice of God to the academics of their world. How absurd. And so here comes the academics, dressed all academic-y and all nerdy and stuff. And they're going to try to entrap Country Bumpkin over here to say stupid stuff. And so they ask what is supposed to be a deep academic question: which is the greatest commandment? Also, in reality, what they're asking of Jesus is, if you want to play this game with us, fine, very well. What do you think is the greatest commandment? Because that would show Jesus' approach to the law, Jesus' tendency towards the law. Let me give that perspective. When a Supreme Court justice is appointed by a president, right, they go through interviews at the Senate. We're all familiar with that. Recent, that never is a easy process. But they go to be interviewed. The senators, in very crafty ways, they have questions for the candidate, right? Questions like on what's your perspective on Roe versus Wade, or what's your perspective on this, on what do you think of the Second Amendment? Okay, what are they really asking? Yes, are you liberal or conservative? That's really what all those questions are about. They just should just start with that. And then let's be done with all those hours. Okay, that's what they really want to know. But they're trying to entrap the candidate by the questions so that public pressure out here be like, oh, no, not a liberal, not a conservative, not, the embodiment of the devil. I mean, whichever way you want to lean there. They're trying to entrap them. So that's why often they'll also bob and weave on the questions. Well, that's a fascinating question. And then they just, have nothing, because they understand it's a trap.
Because they're lawyers.
Because, yes, they're also lawyers, right? That's true. So here they come to entrap, podunk Jesus. Surely he's not bright enough. He'll probably just flat out answer. Imagine that. Somebody that gives you an answer. And so Jesus, tell us, Rabbi. Like they'll even butter him up a little. Oh, Rabbi. Now this isn't in some, chamber somewhere where, C-SPAN or whatever. Does anybody watch those things? I don't know. But this is in the middle of the temple. Last week of Jesus before the cross. Everybody is there. Everybody and their dog are there watching. This is intense. Best Passover ever. Like it was super intense. And so they're there, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people trying to figure out what's going on. And so, Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus says, well, in reality, I'll give you 2. And Jesus summarizes the 10 commandments with 2 points. Love God, love others. That's it. And he doesn't stop there. He's like, you want a clear answer? I'll go further. The entire story of the Bible, he says the prophets and the basically saying the entire storyline of the Bible is to fix those 2 things. Those 2 things. Actually, that's what goes wrong in Genesis 3. Very first thing that goes wrong is because they disobeyed God, the very thing that goes wrong is they burst in flames. No, they don't. You're like, oh, Genesis, I didn't read that. Right? They don't burst in flames. It's funnier, I think. They realize they're naked. Maybe you've had that nightmare. I don't know how that works out. Like this morning, I woke up, right? And I brushed my teeth. And I came out and I greeted my son. And, we made toast because Becky isn't home, so we just made toast. And then, I collected my stuff. I got my book, the bag and stuff for Lucas, you get your stuff? Yeah. Son, did you brush your teeth? Well, that's good enough, right? Don't tell Becky that. So, we get in the car. I drive him to school. Buddy, love you. Have a good day. See you. Okay. Then I drive to OC. There I get there. I've been going to the gym. I'm sure you can tell. Been working out. So I go to the gym, work out. Then I go to class. Then I meet a student. Then I go to another class. Then I ate lunch. I had another class. I met with another student. Then I came home, saw my parents, took a nap on the couch, and then we had dinner. And then Lucas, time to go again, go shower. I don't know if the boy shower. He turns the water on. I don't know what's happening. So, come on, get your stuff, let's go. So we come here, and then I come to teach, and then I'm like, oh, what? I'm naked. Like, what do you mean you realized you're naked? How is that possible? Where were you before that you didn't know you were naked? See what I'm saying? Like, how do you not know? Well, the last verse of chapter 2 is, they were naked and not ashamed. So what's the first thing that technically goes wrong? Their understanding of self and their relationship to other. They've lost trust, the innocence is gone, the vulnerability is broken. What's the very next thing they do? They hear God and then they hide. Do you see the problem? The relationship with God has affected their relationship with each other. That's affected their relationship with God. So what needs to be fixed? Your relationship with God and your relationship with others. Why does Cain kill Abel? Because his relationship with God was already broken. The murder is just an expression of what was already true in his heart. So Jesus' answer is this fulfilled? Right? We're going to get there even deeper. But So the first 4 have to do with their relationship with God, and we're going to walk through those. And then the next 6 have to do with their relationship with each other. That's how we're going to build this community. That's how Paul will articulate that later. He will say, all the commandments, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not covet, don't run off with your neighbor's wife, like all the stuff that kind of makes for a bad community if you're doing those things. He says all that could be worked out if you just love each other. Romans chapter 13. You just love each other. Then you actually don't need those commandments. Imagine that. Community that's truly based by love. Now, once we get further into the lesson here, we're going to have to define what does love mean, because that's problematic. Probably the most unhelpful word in the American dictionary, love. I love Jesus. I love my mama. I love pizza. I love, football. I love granite countertops, and I love the weather. And I hope those things are different. I hope those things are different. So we're going to have to get to that too. But love for God and for each other is where this all goes. And this is the solution. All the stuff we're trying out there, Band-Aids at best. Good intentions, Band-Aids at best. And until we get past all the politics, all the divisions, all me, you, my tribe, your tribe, and something else, and we get back to this, we're going to keep being a very broken family. Very broken family. But to understand we're not under the Old Testament. Yes, I understand that, but that's incorrect. We are in the fulfillment of what the backstory is about. So no, you don't have to go read about if you accidentally killed your neighbor's donkey. But all that the Old Testament is doing is a shadow. It's parts of building blocks towards what Jesus will do in full. So to be in Jesus is to be living the Old Testament in its fullness. Does that make sense? So that's why we're here understanding the building blocks of it. What does it mean to love each other in Jesus? Well, that's why we're starting here. We got to walk through the basics of it so that we understand later what the maturing of it is, the fulfillment of it is. So next time we're going to start with numero uno here, you shall have no other gods before me. And we're going to articulate what that means. All right, thanks for being here. Let's give this community thing a try. Have a good one.